brushstrokes of fate. Josephine Winters tucked a rebellious strand of auburn hair behind her ear as she surveyed the opulent ballroom, the annual Bridgehampton Arts Foundation gala buzzed with New York's elite, precisely the crowd that made her worn emerald dress feel like a costume. She'd only secured an invitation because one of her paintings had been selected for the charity auction, a small victory in her otherwise disappointing career. You look like you're plotting an escape, a deep voice remarked beside her. Josephine turned to find a tall man with intelligent eyes, the color of aged whiskey. Unlike the other attendees draped in designer labels, he wore his tuxedo with a casual confidence that suggested comfort rather than pretension. "Is it that obvious?" she replied, self-consciously smoothing her second-hand dress. Only to a fellow escapee he extended his hand. "Elijah Blackwood." "Josephine Winters," she responded, accepting his handshake. His name tickled at her memory, but she couldn't place it. "The artist behind Harbor at Dawn." He gestured toward her painting across the room, a moody seascape that had taken her months to complete. Surprise flickered across her face. "You know my work. I make it my business to recognize beauty when I see it." His gaze was direct but kind. "Your use of light is ... transcendent." Josephine felt warmth climb her cheeks. After years of rejection letters and empty gallery showings, genuine appreciation felt foreign. "Most people find my style too melancholic. Most people prefer comfort over truth," Elijah replied, leading her toward a quieter corner of the ballroom. "Your paintings don't offer easy answers. That's what makes them valuable." As the evening progressed, their conversation flowed from art theory to childhood memories. Elijah described growing up in a sterile household where success was measured in acquisitions rather than experiences. Josephine shared stories of her grandmother's cottage in Rhode Island, where she'd first learned to mix colors and capture light. "Why do you paint?" he asked as they stepped onto a deserted terrace overlooking the city lights. The question, so simple yet profound, caught her off guard. "Because I have to," she finally answered. "When something inside me needs expression, painting is the only language that feels honest." Elijah nodded as if she'd confirmed something important. "That's why your work matters, Josephine. It speaks truth." When he inquired about her next exhibition, Josephine's enthusiasm dimmed. "There isn't one. My gallery dropped me last month. Apparently, emotional depth doesn't sell as well as decorative abstracts." "Their loss," Elijah said firmly. "Promise me something. Don't compromise your vision. Not for galleries, not for critics, not for anyone." "Easy to say when you're not eating ramen for the third week straight." She laughed softly. "Promise me," he insisted, his expression suddenly serious. Something in his intensity made her nod. "I promise." As midnight approached, Elijah was called away by an associate. Before leaving, he pressed a business card into her palm. "I have to go, but this isn't goodbye, Josephine Winters. I make promises to." Before she could respond, he disappeared into the crowd, leaving her clutching his card and wondering if their connection had been as meaningful to him as it was to her. Asterisk. Canvas of solitude. 6 months after the gala, Josephine's attic studio apartment in Brooklyn felt more like a prison than a sanctuary. Rain pattered against the skylight, casting shifting shadows across her latest work, an unfinished portrait, with empty eyes that seemed to follow her movements accusingly. She set down her brush and massaged her cramping fingers. The heating had been unreliable all winter, leaving her to paint in fingerless gloves that made detailed work nearly impossible. Bills were stacked on her small kitchenette counter, most stamped with final notices in alarming red ink. "What do you think, Bernard?" she asked the elderly tabby cat curled on her windowsill. "Too derivative, not emotional enough." The cat blinked lazily in response, unimpressed by her artistic crisis. Josephine sighed and picked up the business card she'd kept on her easel for months. Elijah Blackwood, Executive Director, Blackwood Foundation for the Arts. She'd researched him after the Galliere, to a real estate empire who'd redirected his portion of the family business toward arts patronage. His foundation had launched several notable careers in recent years. She'd called the number once, 2 weeks after their meeting, but lost her nerve when his assistant answered. What could she possibly say? "Remember me, the struggling artist in the cheap dress who spilled her life story after 2 glasses of champagne?" The memory made her cringe. Instead, she'd channeled her inspiration from that night into a new collection, working through sleepless nights and skipped meals. She'd created 7 paintings that felt different from anything she'd done before, more vulnerable, more authentic. They captured the liminal spaces between hope and resignation, between connection and solitude. A sudden knock interrupted her thoughts. Josephine opened the door to find her landlord, Mr. Vasquez, shifting uncomfortably in the hallway. "Miss Winters, we need to talk about the rent," he began, his usually friendly face solemn. "I know I'm behind, but I've got a lead on a commission," she lied. "Just need another week." His expression softened with genuine regret. "It's been 3 months, Josephine. My wife says I'm too soft, but I can't keep making excuses to the property manager. Please, Mr. Vasquez. My exhibition opens next week at the Bowery Gallery, if it goes well." She let the sentence hang, aware of how desperate she sounded. After he left with reluctant promises of one final extension, Josephine slid down against the closed door. The exhibition had been a miracle. A small, struggling gallery had offered her a chance after their scheduled artist cancelled. They'd even covered the printing costs for invitations, though the implicit understanding was that she'd receive nothing until sales were made. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rosalie, her only friend who hadn't disappeared when Josephine could no longer afford social outings. Just checked the gallery. Your work looks amazing. Who's the mystery buyer? Josephine frowned in confusion and called immediately. What mystery buyer? You don't know. Rosalie sounded surprised. Someone purchased exclusive preview rights to your exhibition. According to Felix, they covered all the costs and bought the Harbor at Dawn piece that was in your portfolio. Heart racing. Josephine thought of the painting, one of her favorites, sold at the charity auction months ago. Did they leave a name? Anonymous, apparently. Felix just said it was someone with considerable influence who insisted on remaining unnamed until opening night. After hanging up, Josephine stared at the business card again, afraid to hope. She'd kept her promise to Elijah, painted with unflinching honesty despite everything. But surely it was coincidence. Men like Elijah Blackwood made casual conversation with dozens of people at events like the gala. She'd been nothing special. Still, as she returned to her canvas that evening, something had changed. The portrait's empty eyes suddenly held possibility where before they'd shown only resignation. With newfound determination, Josephine mixed a complex shade of amber, the exact color of Elijah's eyes, and began to work through the night, racing to complete her collection before the exhibition that might save or end her artistic career. Outside, the rain softened to a gentle mist, and for the first time in months, Josephine painted without fear. Palette of complication. Spring arrived at the Blackwood Foundation's Hudson Valley estate, turning the surrounding woodland into a riot of green. Josephine's studio, a converted carriage house with floor-to-ceiling windows, had become her sanctuary over the past 3 months. Her latest series, landscapes infused with human emotion, lined the walls, each canvas larger and more ambitious than anything she'd attempted before. You're flourishing here, Elijah observed from the doorway, 2 coffee mugs in hand. Josephine accepted one gratefully. Their morning coffee had become a ritual she cherished, a quiet moment before diving into work. It's easy to create when you're not wondering if you can afford dinner. Their relationship had evolved cautiously. Professional boundaries gradually softened into friendship, and friendship into something neither rushed to define. They spent evenings discussing art and literature in the estate's library, weekends exploring local galleries, and occasional impromptu picnics by the property's spring-fed lake. Elijah respected her space, never presuming intimacy but clearly drawn to her company as much as she was to his. The foundation board is impressed with your progress, he said, studying her newest painting. They want to move your exhibition to coincide with the autumn gala. That's months earlier than planned. Josephine frowned. I'm not sure the collection will be ready. It's a vote of confidence, Joe. They believe in your work. Before she could respond, Elijah's phone buzzed. His expression tightened as he checked the screen. My brother's in town. Family dinner tonight. Go, she encouraged, recognizing his reluctance. Family is important. Come with me, he suggested suddenly. It's time you met them. That evening, Josephine found herself in a sleek Manhattan restaurant, seated across from Elijah's older brother, Richard Blackwood, and his wife Victoria. Richard's resemblance to Elijah was striking, though his features were harder, his manner more calculated. So you're the artist Elijah's been hiding upstate, Richard said after introductions. His tone made the residency sound like an indulgence rather than a legitimate program. Victoria examined Josephine with cool assessment. Your work must be exceptional to have captured my brother-in-law's attention. So, completely. The implication hung in the air, making Josephine flush. The foundation's program is professionally structured, she clarified. Elijah has been an excellent mentor. Is that what they're calling it these days? Richard smirked, earning a warning look from his brother. As the dinner progressed, it became clear that the Blackwood family viewed Elijah's Arts Foundation as a frivolous distraction from the real family business. When Richard began questioning the foundation's financial decisions, tension escalated. The Hudson property was intended as a family retreat, not an artist commune, Richard argued. Father never would have approved of this residency scheme. Father left me that property outright, Elijah countered, and the foundation's endowment is separate from family funds. It's still Blackwood money being wasted on what, Richard? Elijah's voice remained calm, but his eyes flashed. On supporting genuine talent instead of collecting status symbols to impress your friends. The ride back to Hudson was silent. Once home, Elijah apologized for his family's behavior. They think I'm using you, Josephine said quietly, voicing her growing concern. Or that you're using the foundation to what? Seduced struggling artists. Elijah ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Is that what you think too? No, she said, though doubt had been planted. But your family clearly believes your interest in me is undermining your judgment. My family measures value in dollars and influence, Elijah said. They don't understand what you've created here, what we've built together. He reached for her hand. And Josephine realized with startling clarity that she loved this man not for his wealth or what he'd given her, but for his vision, his integrity, his belief in art's power to transform. "We can prove them wrong," she whispered, stepping closer. Elijah's kiss was tentative at first, then deepened with months of restrained longing for one perfect moment. Their worlds aligned without complication, but complications arrived the next morning with a tabloid article, "Blackwood, heirs artistic investment business or pleasure," accompanied by candid photos of their kiss on the estate grounds. The article questioned the legitimacy of the residency program, implying Josephine had secured her position through romantic involvement with Elijah *. Masterpiece of love. The scandal forced Josephine to confront uncomfortable truths. Despite her talent, would her career forever be tainted by whispers of favoritism? Would Elijah's foundation lose credibility because of their relationship? These questions drove her to make the hardest decision of her life. She left the residency program, declining Elijah's calls and messages for 3 months. Josephine worked from a small rented studio in Philadelphia, channeling her heartbreak into the most powerful work of her career. When a prestigious gallery offered her a solo exhibition, she accepted on condition that her connection to the Blackwood Foundation remain unmentioned. Opening night arrived with critical acclaim but emotional emptiness. Surrounded by admirers, Josephine felt only the absence of the one person who truly understood her vision. "He came looking for you," Rosalie said, appearing at her side. "Twice I didn't tell him where you were, like you asked." Josephine nodded, guilt mingling with resolve. "It was the right decision. For both of us." "Was it?" Rosalie challenged. "Because he's standing outside right now, looking like he hasn't slept in weeks." Heart racing, Josephine found Elijah in the alley behind the gallery, rain soaking his untucked shirt as he paced. "You shouldn't be here," she said, voice breaking despite her determination. He turned, eyes brightening at the sight of her. "I had to see your exhibition. It's extraordinary, Joe. Everything I knew you could create. I did it on my own," she said. "No foundation, no patrons, no controversy. I know, that's why I didn't come inside." He stepped closer, raindrops clinging to his eyelashes. "I didn't want to cast any shadow on your achievement." Something in his deference undid her. "Why are you really here, Elijah?" "To tell you I've stepped down as director of the foundation." At her shocked expression, he continued, "I've established an independent board. The residency program continues, but I'm no longer involved in selecting artists or managing operations." "You loved that work," she whispered. "I love you more." The simplicity of his declaration took her breath away. "I've spent these months creating something new, a smaller gallery in Boston, completely separate from the Blackwood name, a place where artists can show work without the weight of patronage or politics." "And us?" Josephine asked, rain now soaking through her dress as she stood before him. "That depends on whether you still want there to be an us," Elijah said. "I don't regret finding you, supporting your work, or falling in love with you, but I regret letting anyone make you feel like your success wasn't earned." Josephine considered the journey from that first night at the gala, how far she'd come, how much she'd grown. She'd proven to herself that she could succeed independently, but she'd also learned that true connection didn't diminish individual strength, it amplified it. "I have a new collection," she said finally. 7 paintings about promises made and kept. I've been saving them. Hope illuminated his face. "For what?" "For the right gallery, one that values authenticity above all else." She took his hand, feeling the familiar warmth that had been missing from her life. "I think I've found it." 6 months later, as Josephine and Elijah stood together at the opening of their jointly created gallery, a critic approached to ask about the story behind their partnership. "It began with a promise," Josephine answered, exchanging a smile with Elijah as he slipped his hand into hers, their fingers intertwining like complementary colors on a masterfully balanced canvas. Their life together would never be simple to artists navigating the complex world of art and commerce, but it would always be authentic, a continuous collaborative work painted with honesty, passion, and the most enduring pigment of all, love that recognizes and celebrates the other's true colors.